The views expressed on the following broadcasts do not necessarily reflect those of KHLT, Take 12 Radio, or our affiliates. The opinions on this show should not be considered as medical, psychological, or professional advice and are those of the host, co-host, and guest. Take 12 Radio and KHLT Recovery Broadcasting are not affiliated with any particular 12-step fellowship.
One day at a time with its failures and fears, with portion of pain and burden of care, we must meet.
Welcome to Walking Through the Language of the Heart, a journey into the Grapevine writings of Alcoholics Anonymous co-founder Bill W. And now, here are your co-hosts, Chris S. and the Monty'man.
Well, howdy doody. Welcome aboard, one and all. Thank you for tuning in to Walking Through the Language of the Heart. Sorry about not producing a show last week. My apologies. We did. I think we posted the best of. Oh, I know what we did. Oh boy, did we ever get?
What did we do?
I posted my my interview with Mike Lindell, the My Pillow guy.
Oh my God!
Yeah, and that was back. We did that interview back when President Trump was in office, and Mike had just met with the vice president, and then he was the next schedule thing was being on my show. And so, but we talked about his crack cocaine addiction and his recovery from being addicted to crack and moving from that into being a success in business, and the amount of money this guy gives to nonprofits and actually the recovery community is amazing. Most people don't even know that. But I got a little bit of flack. Let me tell you what, that's okay. I've never been known not to be controversial. It's kind of what I do. So there you go.
That's funny. Mike Lindell was our replacement last week.
I know, right?
That's something.
So if you've never joined us, folks, and you're just like horrified now, welcome aboard to Walking Through the Language of the Heart. So what we are doing, Chris and I are going through this book, The Language of the Heart, Bill W.'s Grapevine writings from 1944 to 1970. And we are, where are we at with this one, Chris?
We are November 1950. The article that we're going to go over tonight, Monty, is AA is not big business.
Yeah.
So again, a lot of times Bill was responding to current situations that was going on in Alcoholics Anonymous, problems that might not have happened yet that he saw could possibly happen. He was very far-seeing and very predictive and very protective of this thing called Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yes.
So this is probably one of those articles that, in a very, very nice way, warns us against our worst instincts. Probably, again, you and I don't read these. We want to have fresh minds and fresh perspectives as we do this show, but. Let's dig in. Let's see what he has to say about AA not being big business.
Okay.
Because I will tell you this may not be a secret. AA is big business now. Anybody that has a $20 million prudent reserve is not small time anymore. And again, there's spiritual principles that quite possibly other businesses don't operate under, and it's it can still be seen as a spiritual entity. But from 1950 until today, the amount of funding that this organization gets is astronomically increased. From who knows what the prudent reserve was in 1950? It might have been $2,500. You know what I mean?
Right.
But today we're talking a lot of money. Anyway, that being said, AA is not big business. November 1950. Thanksgiving is coming, and with it, Tradition Week. I never felt happier. Yeah, we've talked about this.
Yeah,
every
right.
single time a tradition comes up in one of these articles, that he might have been feeling happy,
Right.
but everybody was like, "Oh no, he's going to talk about the traditions." Oh no, Bill, please. But listen, these were his babies, and I don't think he would have felt comfortable until they were fully integrated into Alcoholics Anonymous, because he believed that they were protective, and they've proven to be very, very
Certainly.
protective principles. Our traditions are not set down on paper, but they were written first in our hearts. For each of us knows instinctively, I think, that AA is not ours to do with as we please. We are but caretakers to preserve the spiritual quality of our fellowship, keep it whole for those who will come after us and have need of what has so generously been given to us. Being the caretaker is it's a very humble, very spiritual way of explaining what our role is and what his role was in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I've used the same type of terminology when working with people. I'll give you, for instance, somebody's having problems with their finances. Either they're spending way more money than they're making, or they owe a lot of money, or it just doesn't seem that they can save. That comes up a lot, with people in recovery.
Sure.
And I explain to them the concept of being a steward of God's money.
Mm-hmm.
So the better steward you are of God's money, it seems, the more abundant the money will be.
Absolutely.
Isn't that true, Monty?
It's a spiritual principle, and absolutely. We've proven it over and over and over again, just in our personal finances.
Now you tithe, and
yes.
There's definitely a spiritual component to that.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because it seems like, at least the people that I know personally, the people that have the least tend to give the most, and therefore they actually have more. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because the bank statement doesn't say everything.
That's right.
The bank statement doesn't equate to quality of life or
Amen.
Peace of mind. It just doesn't. So I found that when I was out there running, and everything was about me, and every dime was being spent on what I wanted, and I was just generally selfish financially with my money. I didn't have any. and when I really started to put the money to good use, with family, with children, with organizations, with things I felt were worthy investments, it just seemed that's my career, and the money being made in that career just seemed to increase. So it's one more of those things where the math doesn't work in Alcoholics Anonymous, but the spiritual math is different than the numerical math.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we learned our lesson about money early. We feared organization lest we solidify and destroy ourselves as a movement. At the same time, we face the moral and humane obligation to make our program instantly available to all who ask for it. And they came in ever increasing numbers. Now, from 1935 to 1950, we're really only talking about 15 years. He's seen the experience of Alcoholics Anonymous. It mushroomed. I mean, it absolutely exploded. Sometimes every year they were doubling their membership in those first 15 years. Now, we don't have that same dynamic at all anymore. It's probably been 30 years since there's been a significant increase in 12-step membership of any kind of, proportion that he's talking about. But he saw an enormous growth in Alcoholics Anonymous. So he's probably paying attention in areas that we might not be paying as close attention to anymore, because I guess it was scary that every year the membership was doubling. Could this thing get out of control? Could it become a movement? Could it be taken over by forces that wanted to use it selfishly? And I think he was forever trying to protect it and us from that, especially with these traditions.
Do you think that one of the reasons that we haven't seen such a huge increase within Alcoholics Anonymous specifically is because of the different 12-step fellowships that have arrived, like Celebrate Recovery and Alcoholics Victorious and some of these other groups, and that might be the big reason?
I don't know about a big reason. I know there's probably multiple reasons.
Sure.
And my favorite reasons is that in the first 15 years of Alcoholics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous was a 12-step program of recovery with a support fellowship. And what happened over the course of time was AA became a sobriety fellowship with an occasional program of recovery being implemented. And that in itself would have devastating effects on membership growth. But there are a lot of other things. The population of alcoholics willing to consider something like this, was maybe finite. There's a lot of competing treatment programs and processes and recovery movements that probably took some of the wind out of its sail. But I'm one of these guys that believe that we somehow allowed members of Alcoholics Anonymous to languish in the back row year after year after year, not being held accountable by their sponsors to a recovery program. And that created an enormous revolving door within Alcoholics Anonymous. And why I say that is because the forward to in the forward, you're going to see that it says 50% of the people got sober at once when they came to AA, another 25% after some relapse, and the other 25% showed improvement that stuck with AA. And the enormous amount of relapse and in and out and membership change in AA today is, it's nothing like it was back
Sure.
in the early days. It's just become okay to do a terrible job. In AA. And in the early days, no, they wouldn't bring you to a meeting if you weren't working the steps in a serious way. If you didn't mean business, that's how they put it. If you're a drunk who did not mean business, there was no place for you. And today there's a place for anybody that walks in and raises their hand and admits to wanting to not drink. And I'm not necessarily criticizing that, but I am
Sure.
pointing a finger at it as a reason why the success rates of people walking in the door of AA has changed from 50 and 75% to 5, maybe 3. There's some people in Texas, or some friends of ours, who pay attention to the Houston group,
Sure.
and the Houston group buys the poker chips. So there's a specific poker chip for a desire chip. Then there's a poker chip for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, a year. And what they find is there's like 30,000 desire chips that are sold to the group every year. There's like 3,000 30-day chips. There's like 1,500 6-month chips. There's like 1,000 1-year chips. So when you look at that, you have to say you got a 1 in 30 chance of staying sober a year going to that group, and that's one of the best groups there is. What's going on? What's
Yeah.
going on? And I personally, me, Monty, I personally believe it's the problem could be solved by strong sponsorship, by sponsors taking their responsibility seriously and providing an adequate presentation of the 12 steps, and holding someone accountable to a recovery program.
Amen. Amen.
That's just me.
Yeah. Well, we're on the same page there, buddy.
Yeah, we're both fanatics. Wouldn't have it any other way. Okay, it says, yes, we've had need of money and we've had to provide services, but we're resolved never to allow either money or the management of our necessary affairs to obscure our spiritual aims. That is an important sentence, because as Alcoholics Anonymous grew and more services were added, more and more services. I just give you a few of them: the convention committees, the literature committees. There's people on the board that their sole job is paying attention to the copyrights and making sure that they don't lose the copyrights. It's an enormous organization now. Much of it, board directed and volunteer directed, but there's a number of paid people. When you look at the service structure throughout the country, secretaries, there's all kinds of paid people today, and that's fine, as long as we realize that this is a spiritual program. Okay, it's not a Fortune 500 program. It's not, there's many things out there that it's not supposed to be.
Yeah.
Motivational programs, transformational spiritual retreat centers. There's like all these different things, and they're really, what they are is they're businesses. And although the doors have to be kept open and our services need to be provided for the still sick and suffering alcoholic, and that does take money, we should be very, very careful about how much money, and allowing the treasury to become $20 million, because that's our prudent reserve. I would really look at that carefully. When if you are paying attention to Bill Wilson's original vision, you can be someone who says, well, listen, that was 1950, and it's 2023 today, and things have changed. Yeah, okay, things have changed. Things really haven't changed. The big book is the big book. The
Right.
meetings are the meetings. The business of AA, the structure of AA might be different, but AA is still the same. It's one drunk talking to another. That's the magic of it.
Are you surprised at all that we haven't had more serious financial issues than we have?
Well, we have had, financial issues that would cleared the deck of the leadership team of any company.
Yeah, true enough.
Like the manuscript debacle where they sued the owner of the original manuscript and lost in court, and it ended up costing $3 million worth of dollars in the basket. There's been times treasuries have been stolen. There's been times that there's been really bad planning with the international convention, and they're a million in the hole. There's been a lot of I would say careless stewardship of the money that so painstakingly gets put into baskets at our meetings and transferred into the service structure. All in all, Bill would look at it like that. These are growing pains. We're going to go through this. We're going to get to the other side. God's in charge of the whole thing. We're going to learn from our mistakes. He would be like, he would be. That's how he probably would look at these things. But am I surprised that there haven't been more and larger ones? Yeah, kinda, because you know how we are,
right? And there's a lot of us.
So here's the thing, Monty. Selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. Okay, in the step 3 prep, it tells us that's what our real problem is. In step 4, what do we inventory? We inventory resentment. We inventory dishonesty. We inventory fear. We inventory selfishness. In the 5th step, what do we share? We share selfishness. We share dishonesty. We share fear. In step 6, what do we become willing to have removed? The dishonesty, the fear, the selfishness, the resentment. In step 7, what do we ask God to remove? The selfishness, the resentment, the dishonesty. In step 8, what do? We put a list together of the people and the institutions that we've harmed because of our own expressions of resentment, fear, dishonesty. Okay. And in step 9, we actually go out and make amends to those people and institutions where we were selfish, dishonest, resentful, afraid, right?
Yeah.
And in step 10, it's a day-to-day step where we're continually asked to look at where we were selfish, where we were dishonest, where we were self-seeking, where we were frightened, and then in step 11, it's like when you wake up in the morning, ask God to help you not be selfish, dishonest, resentful, afraid. At night, review your day. Ask yourself where you were selfish, dishonest, and if you need to make an amends, make an amends. So here's the problem with the service structure. We can't guarantee someone has gone through the 12 steps before they joined the service structure.
Yeah.
So what happens is unrecovered people show up in the service structure with agendas, a narcissistic selfishness, and it's going to be their way or the highway. And so am I surprised that things haven't been worse? Yes. But, I don't think there's a way to ensure members actually recover.
Right.
It's too bad that there isn't, but there isn't. And the service structure is packed with people like that. So anyway,
thank the good Lord above that he's got our back. Let's just put it that way.
yeah. That was kind of a tangent I went on there, Monty.
I loved it. That was great.
You know how I am. So here it says, yes, we've had need of money and we've had to provide services, but we're resolved never to allow either money or the management of our necessary affairs to obscure our spiritual aims. The same loving God whose divine wisdom has shown us that one desperate and shaky drunk fumbling for a nickel to call for help looms larger than any organization we shall ever have or need. So sometimes people tell me, "Oh, AA's going to die. AA's heading for the graveyard. If there's not significant change to meet the needs of the current generation and all this stuff, I just don't buy into that, because there's always going to be a need for one alcoholic talking to another alcoholic about recovery,
Yeah.
because there's magic in that,
Yeah.
and all this other stuff is to make that maybe more available, maybe easier to find, but the real AA work is one alcoholic sitting down with another alcoholic, explaining to them, their experience with alcohol, their experience with the recovery program, gaining some kind of rapport. Hopefully the individual wants to recover, and then there's that connection. There's one person adequately presenting the 12 steps to the person so that they can recover. And a lot of our meeting experience is that's just icing on the cake of
Right.
recovery. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At Cleveland, July last, 7,000 AAs set their approval to the 12 traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous. We took our destiny by the hand. Alcoholics Anonymous had grown up. I think it was last week, Monty, when we read how he called for the vote.
Right.
I love it. I love it. If anybody didn't hear the show last week, this is basically what Bill did. He goes, these traditions are really, really important, and I've been working for years and years and years on them. Does anybody out there think that I've been wasting my time? Is anybody against these traditions? Okay, then it's unanimous.
Yeah.
He pulled one of those,
Right.
and I think if it was a secret ballot, I think it would have been a closer call, because many people didn't understand them. Many people thought that they were going to be confusing and add more red tape to the whole thing about having groups, and I'm so glad that Bill was far-seeing enough to do what he had to do. What he had to do to get these things across the finish line, because he was sober longer than anybody in AA, and he saw more than anybody in AA. If you would have asked many of the groups, what do you think of the traditions in 1950? They'd be, that stuff Bill's talking about, I don't know. I don't think we need it. That would have been probably the majority opinion.
Sure.
But thank God we got them. 3 of those traditions define the services of Alcoholics Anonymous and outline their collective responsibility for them: management responsibility and money responsibility. The tradition also say that our trusted servants shall never govern, that they shall always be directly accountable to those they serve. Now, that's a wonderful principle. Okay, it's not always seen to be placed into application. So what I mean by that is, a lot of times they describe Alcoholics Anonymous as an upside down pyramid.
Sure. Yeah.
So what that looks like is all the groups are on the top. They're really in charge. They give the information to their GSRs, that give the information to their DCMs, that give the information to the delegates and to Alcoholics Anonymous in decision making. That's really how it's supposed to work. But we've seen many, many examples where that's bypassed, ignored,
Yeah.
For one reason or another. The new publication of the plain language big book is a good example of that. There was no group approval with that. So where it works, I think a lot of times these principles are applied. I would like to see them applied consistently
Across the board.
everywhere. Because another thing, Monty, is there's an oversized representation of the East Coast and the West Coast. If you look at the service structure as a whole, there's a huge influence coming out of California. There's a huge influence coming out of New York, and there's groups everywhere. There's groups everywhere, and to be really collaborative, to be really inclusive, those voices need to be paid attention to, and they need to be heard. And you can't stack the deck so that California and New York outvote the rest of the 48 states. You can't do that. You know what I mean? And again, there's structural things that if the spiritual principles were applied religiously, a lot of those criticisms or challenges, whatever you want to call them, would be handled in a spiritual way.
Sure.
And I think there's some fear about letting that happen. There would never be any progress if we let Iowa make our decisions. Iowa needs to have their voice heard. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I see this happen in the state of Oregon here, and I'm sure it happens other places too. But there's primarily one section of Oregon that has the final say in everything, and that's Portland, right? And so Oregon is a big state. There's a lot of property. There's a lot of farmland. There's a lot of people don't know this. Oregon is about 60% desert. Oregon is thought of as the green state, right? And actually, there's a lot of desert in Oregon. There is a lot of land, and people live on it that aren't being heard. Yeah. Portland makes the decisions, and I see that within the 12-step fellowships as well as other fellowships, Rotary Club,
sure,
Boy Scouts,
politics.
Yeah,
sure.
You betcha.
I don't have an answer. I can see the problem, but I don't have an answer. But I think if all these people would really practice these principles, and all of them have done their work with selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear, I think there'd be more of a collaborative, more of a inclusive kind of decision-making process. That's what I believe.
I agree.
I don't mean to be critical. Listen, I would give my life for Alcoholics Anonymous. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And don't think that I don't love it if I'm critical of it every once in a while.
It's an honest observation. It's an inventory that we must take. I mean, we have to observe, and we have to check ourselves. And of course, we make sure that we got the plank out of our own eye first. But it's okay to say, hey, maybe this isn't okay. We need to rethink this. Of course, it's another thing if anybody's going to listen to us.
Yeah, right. Last month, I broadcast to you, the members of Alcoholics Anonymous, an urgent appeal. It was a plea that you take full money responsibility for your AA headquarters, the Alcoholic Foundation, and its AA General Service Office in New York. So what he's asking is for groups to send small amounts of money, each of them, to New York, because that's where the General Service was. And remember, we're talking about the money that went in the basket would clank, back in these days. Where we're not talking about a lot of money. So he says, we who work in your headquarters are delighted with the result. Groups who never helped before have now done so. New groups, very small groups, institutional groups, not really under any obligation, have made sacrifices. If this keeps up, our deficit at headquarters will be a thing of the past. Never have I been so encouraged about the future of our services. Your generous and responsible action makes a fitting setting for the news I'm about to give you. Now, I'm not sure if I'm stepping on his next paragraph, but there was a time when AA paid back all the money. Now, do you know of any other organization that paid the Rockefeller Foundation back the money that had been granted to it by the Rockefeller Foundation?
No.
It just never happens, right? And they owed money on big books, and they owed a bunch of, AA members, in the first 15 years for stock certificates and all kinds of stuff like that. As the money started to come in, I believe Bill and the people that were sitting in New York were decent stewards of that money, and they were made whole and self-supporting in those early days. Mm-hmm. For 12 years, warmly aided by great friends, Dr. Bob and I have stood sentinel over your headquarters. Really, Bill has Bob was in Akron, okay?
Yeah.
We've been holding these valuable assets in trust for you. Your General Service Office, your book Alcoholics Anonymous, your principal magazine, the AA Grapevine, your public relations, your common funds. We have never asked you to take any direct responsibility for them, but times have changed. Alcoholics Anonymous is now grown. Its founders are perishable. We cannot be your guardians always. Now, I believe, Dr. Bob is about to die if he hasn't died already. I believe it was in 1951 or 1950 when he died. So Bill is understanding that the co-founders were not going to outlast
right
this fellowship. So again, he's far-seeing. He's trying to put things into place. He's trying to get our attitudes and our outlooks in line with something that becomes sustainable. So the hour has come when you must take these things into your own keeping. We ask that you guard them well, for the future of Alcoholics Anonymous may depend on how you maintain and support these life-giving arms of service. Anticipating that you will happily accept this new responsibility, the trustees, Dr. Bob and I, propose the General Service Conference of Alcoholics Anonymous, a body of state and provincial representatives who will sit yearly with our foundation trustees as their traditional guide. We have long considered and will soon present a detailed plan designed to bring this great change about. Wow. This is, he's preparing to fully turn Alcoholics Anonymous over to itself with self-sustainable processes that don't require, what do you think Bill thinks about this? Or let's get Bill's approval. He's putting this together. And I think that's a great thing. Monty, I read this book once. It was called From Good to Great. And someone interviewed a ton of really successful CEOs, large Fortune 500, Fortune 100 CEOs. And after deciding, which businesses were ultra successful and carried the industry standard and became the most successful in that line of business, he interviewed these CEOs, and what he found was that these CEOs were selfless. In other words, these CEOs saw the health of the company over the health of any specific person in the company, including themselves. And the decisions they made were based on the health of the company itself, without any ego, without any, narcissistic, I know everything kind of an attitude that you see a lot today. I'm not gonna name any names, but today's a beautiful day where you can see the exact opposite of that in some of these big businesses. And one of the things that he really would ensure is that when that CEO left, the company would stay healthy. In other words, did that CEO put together a really great succession plan? Did he train people who could come after him and be as successful as he was? Did he put the work in for the business, right? And so what Bill is talking about here is the same type of selflessness that great CEOs will have. Putting the organization, putting the needs of the organization ahead of everything. And I think, as Bill is conniving in his head and putting concepts and traditions and all this and guidelines and service structure things together, that's his ultimate move so that this thing stays healthy in perpetuity.
It's almost like a parent raising their child. We know that, the main job of a parent is to prepare the child for the real world, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what he's doing. He's preparing his baby in its process of growing up to go out in the real world, because he's not going to be around forever. And it's got to be able to take care of itself. And that's amazing stuff. I mean, I think I would venture to guess that he really had a long-term vision for Alcoholics Anonymous that nobody else could have imagined at the time, that probably belonged to him alone for some time.
He might have had, confidants, and, he always had a crew. It started with Hank Parkhurst and Dr. Bob.
Yeah.
He always had a crew, and he probably had some people that he confided in. He did talk quite a lot. If you got in a conversation with him, he would go on and on and on. So there's probably people that understood what he was trying to do. Were there true believers in the early days in this stuff? I've not seen any evidence of it. I'm sure that there was, but I don't see any contemporaneous evidence of people, saying Bill is really onto something here. Everybody, pay attention.
Yeah,
I don't.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything like that. So I think you're right. I think he was kind of lone wolfing it, and thank God that he did.
Yeah. Amen.
Alcoholics Anonymous has come of age. And I believe the book Alcoholics Anonymous Comes of Age was written not long after this. It's a great Thanksgiving. And that is the end of that article, Monty.
Yeah, great article. Great article. AA is not big business, or is it?
Let's compromise. AA is big spiritual business.
There you go. I like that. That's a great way to close this episode of Walking Through the Language of the Heart. Wow, really good stuff. So listen, listeners, I want you to understand that if you're just tuning in for the first time and you want to catch up on these, let your heart not be troubled. We have each one of these shows for fun and for free for you to download. Visit us at take12radio.com and click on the Recovery Workshops banner, and there you will find other workshops with Chris S. and myself, as well as some other folks. And you'll find Walking Through the Language of the Heart. Click on it, and there they will be. And as best as we are able, every week we put this together. And we are, let's see here. Well, getting there. We'll
be a third of the way through soon.
About a third of the way soon. Soon. So let's see. Next week. Ooh, your third legacy. Yeah. So what were the first two legacies, Chris?
Oh, geez.
Was it the steps, the traditions, and then was the third
Yeah, this is going to be the concepts.
The concepts, I would think.
Wow, he's moving in. He's moving into that. I suppose groups are coming from everywhere.
Yeah.
Groups of people are coming from everywhere to the General Service Conference, and there's got to be some structure put around that. So, the legacies are the triangle: unity, recovery, service.
Right.
So he's going to start talking about the service legacy.
Yeah. Yeah. Right on. All right. Well, thank you, Chris, once again. Friends, our email address is take12radio@comcast.net. We'd love to hear from you, rather. And, until our next broadcast, this is the Monty'man, along with Chris S. and the rest of the Take 12 Recovery Radio family. And we are wishing God's perfect serenity for you. For more recovery workshops with Chris S. and the Monty'man, visit our website at take12radio.com and click on the Recovery Workshops banner.
This has been a broadcast of Take 12 Recovery Radio and KHLT Recovery Broadcasting.
Kitty, 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 kitty. Meow, meow, meow.
Woof, woof.